She stood in the middle of my driveway, arms crossed, eyes full of fire, and shouted loud enough for the whole street to hear, "Give me that baby. You people can't raise a child in this neighborhood without HOA approval." My wife froze, clutching our newborn tighter against her chest. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Some whispering, some recording on their phones. Karen waved a stack of papers she had printed from her computer, shaking them like they were law. "This house isn't yours. This child isn't safe with you. Hand her over, now." I stepped between her and my wife, calm but cold. My fist stayed loose, but my eyes locked on hers. "That's my daughter," I said, my voice low enough to make her lean back a little. "And you're on my property." She scoffed, pretending she had all the power, pretending the flimsy papers in her hand meant something. "Don't test me," she sneered. "I've already called the HOA police. They'll be here any minute, and you'll be arrested for trespassing on my street." The crowd outside grew, phones raised, waiting for the showdown. My wife whispered nervously, "She's insane. She really thinks she can take our baby." Karen's smirk grew wider as sirens echoed faintly in the distance. She thought she'd won. She thought she had us cornered. But what she didn't know was who I really was. 2 black SUVs rolled into the cul-de-sac. Lights flashing but no real police logos on the sides, just big bold letters that read, HOA Enforcement. Karen's grin stretched ear to ear as 4 men stepped out in matching dark uniforms. They wore cheap badges clipped to their belts, and one even carried handcuffs like a toy he bought online. "There they are," Karen shouted, pointing straight at me and my wife. "Take the baby. Arrest him for trespassing." One of the so-called officers marched up, chest puffed, hand resting on his belt like he'd practiced this in a mirror. "Sir, step aside," he barked. "This property is under HOA authority. You have no legal right to be here. And that child is at risk." My wife gasped, clutching our daughter tighter, her voice trembling. "You can't take my baby. You can't." Karen, standing behind them, folded her arms smugly and whispered to a neighbor, "Watch this. He'll be begging me in 10 seconds. I stayed still, my jaw clenched, my eyes fixed on the fake officer blocking my doorway. Every part of me wanted to tear through this charade. But I forced myself to breathe slow, calm. My neighbors only saw a black man about to be dragged off his own land by fake cops. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know who I was, or what I carried inside me. The tallest of the men reached for my arm. But before he could touch me, I said in a voice that made the crowd go silent, "You better move your hand before I remind you what happens when someone grabs a Navy SEAL." Karen's confident smirk twitched. The so-called officers froze. And the whole street suddenly realized this wasn't going to end the way she thought. The tallest fake cop yanked his hand back like he'd touched fire, his eyes darting to the others. "Navy SEAL." One of them muttered under his breath, suddenly unsure. Karen, however, doubled down, her voice shrill enough to slice the air. "Don't listen to him. He's lying. He's just some squatter pretending to be tough. Arrest him before he hurts somebody." She turned to the neighbors filming and shouted, "Stop recording. This is HOA business." But no one lowered their phones. In fact, more cameras went up, catching every word. My wife stood behind me, clutching our daughter, whispering, "Please. Just make them leave." I gave her a quick glance, a silent promise. Then stepped forward until I was chest to chest with the so-called officer. He tried to stand tall, but his voice cracked when he said, We have authority here." I leaned close enough for only him to hear. "Authority? I've been in war zones. I've led men through fire. And I can smell a coward before he even speaks." His face paled, sweat breaking on his forehead. The other 3 shifted nervously, clearly realizing they were in way over their heads. Karen screeched, "Do your job. Take his wife, take the baby, now." She shoved one of the men forward, but he stumbled back, shaking his head. "This isn't right," he muttered. Her face twisted, red with fury. She grabbed the fake badge from his belt and waved it herself. "Fine. I'll do it myself." The crowd gasped as she stepped onto my porch, reaching out with one hand toward my newborn. And right then, the real sirens began to echo down the street. Karen froze mid-step, her hand inches from my daughter. As the wail of real police sirens grew louder, the fake officers spun around like deer caught in headlights. Neighbors rushed closer, their cameras lifted higher, whispering, "Those aren't real cops." "Are they?" Two marked cruisers screeched to a stop in front of my house. The doors swung open and out stepped uniformed officers, real ones this time. Their body cams blinked red, catching everything. One of them immediately barked, "Everyone step back." His partner pointed at the fake squad. "You four, hands where we can see them." Karen's face drained of color. She tried to shove the fake badge into her purse, but half the neighborhood had already caught it on video. "Officers!" she shouted, desperate. "They're criminals. That man broke into my neighborhood. He's dangerous, he threatened me." She pointed at me, her voice trembling now, but full of fake victim tears. The real cop didn't even glance at me. He turned straight to Karen. "Ma'am, why are you holding a counterfeit badge?" She stammered, No, it's not counterfeit, it's neighborhood security." The officer lifted the badge from her hand, tilted it under the sun, then looked back at her sharply. "Neighborhood security doesn't impersonate law enforcement." The fake officers started backing toward their SUV, but the second cruiser cut them off. One neighbor shouted, "It's all on camera." She told them to steal the baby. Phones waved in the air as proof. Karen's confident mask cracked into panic. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," she whispered, her eyes darting around. And that's when I finally spoke, my voice steady, carrying over the entire crowd. "She wanted to take my newborn. On my own land. Now let's see how she explains that in front of a judge." The officers moved fast, real. Handcuffs clicked on the wrists of the fake HOA. Police, they're cheap. Badges and knockoff gear tossed into evidence bags. The crowd cheered, some neighbors clapping, others yelling, "Finally." And, about time someone stopped her. Karen thrashed and screamed, but the officers grabbed her arms and held her still. "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I own this neighborhood. I was protecting it." One of the cops looked her dead in the eye and said, "Ma'am, you're under arrest for impersonating law enforcement, attempted kidnapping, and trespassing. You don't own anything." My wife held our baby close, tears in her eyes, whispering, "She's safe. She's really safe." I wrapped my arm around them both, my chest tight with relief, but my voice firm when I answered loud enough for everyone to hear. "I fought for this country so my family could be free. Nobody takes that away from me." The officers guided Karen into the back of the cruiser as her empire of lies crumbled right there on the street. The fake cops hung their heads, silent, while neighbors who once feared her now filmed with pride, their voices rising in one clear message: justice served. As the cruisers pulled away, I looked at the crowd, then back at my daughter sleeping peacefully against her mother's chest. A weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time since moving here, the street felt like ours again. I took a slow breath, then said the line that would echo through every video uploaded that night. "No one threatens my family. Not on my land."